I want you to picture something for me. You are lying in your own bed, in your own home, completely asleep, completely safe. Or so you believe. And while you sleep, someone is standing over you with a pair of scissors. Not a nightmare. This is what happened to me on a Tuesday morning in October, and by the time I understood the full truth of it, I had already decided exactly what I was going to do. I just wasn't going to rush it, because the people who hurt me were counting on me to panic. And I have never in my life given anyone what they were counting on. I need to start a little earlier, because this story didn't begin with scissors. It began with a rumor. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I had been married for 4 years to a man I will call Daniel, and for 4 years I had been managing his mother, a woman I will call Renata. Renata was the kind of woman who believed she had a divine right to an opinion about everything in her son's life, what he ate, where he worked, and most especially, who he married. From the very first week of our relationship, she made it clear that I was a placeholder, someone her son had chosen out of confusion, and someone she fully intended to outlast. I smiled through every holiday dinner. I sent thank you notes. I bit my tongue so many times I'm surprised I have one left. And Daniel would always say, "That's just how she is. She means well." I heard that sentence so many times it stopped having any meaning at all. The rumor started because of a man named Marcus. Marcus was my coworker, one of my closest friends at the office, and a gay man who had been in a committed relationship with his partner for 6 years. We carpooled twice a week. We had lunch together, we texted each other memes about our jobs, and complained about the same difficult clients. That was the entirety of our relationship. But someone, and I still don't know who first said it, told Renata that I was having an affair with Marcus. And Renata, who had been looking for a reason to destroy my marriage since the day it started, grabbed that rumor with both hands and never let go. She brought it to Daniel. I know this now, though I didn't know it then. She told him I was sneaking around, that I was betraying him, that he needed to open his eyes. And Daniel, my husband, the man who had promised in front of witnesses to stand beside me, didn't come to me. He didn't ask me. He started watching me. And he started talking to his mother about what to do. I noticed the shift in him, but I couldn't name it. He was cooler, more distant. He asked vague questions about my day that felt less like interest and more like interrogation. I asked him once if something was wrong, and he said, "No, everything's fine." Everything was not fine. But I didn't know yet how far things had already gone. The morning it happened, I woke up at 6:47. I know the exact time, because I looked at my phone the second my eyes opened, the way you do when something feels wrong before your brain has caught up. The first thing I noticed was that my neck felt cold. I reached up and touched my hair, or where my hair should have been. My hair at the time fell past my shoulder blades. I had been growing it for 3 years. I touched the back of my head and felt nothing. Stubble and jagged, uneven ends that stopped just below my ears on one side and above my ear on the other. There were clumps of dark hair on the pillow, on the floor beside the bed. And there, on the nightstand, was a pair of sewing scissors that did not belong to me. I didn't scream. I want you to understand that. I felt something move through me that was colder and quieter than screaming. I picked up my phone. I took photographs of everything, the hair on the pillow, the hair on the floor, the scissors, the nightstand, my own reflection in the bathroom mirror. I documented everything before I touched anything else. I don't know why that instinct kicked in so quickly. Maybe because some part of me already knew this was going to become evidence. Daniel was in the kitchen. I walked in and he looked at me, and his face did something complicated. Not shock, not horror, not the face of a man seeing something for the first time. It was the face of a man who had been waiting. And he said, "I will never forget this as long as I live." He said, "My mom did it to teach you a lesson." I said, "Your mother was in our house last night. Not a question." I said, "While I was sleeping." He said, "Yes." I said, "And you knew?" And he looked at the floor and he said she was really upset about Marcus. She needed to do something. She needed to do something. He said that about a woman who had entered our home, stood over his sleeping wife, and cut off her hair. She needed to do something, and he had given her the key. Here is where I think most people would have exploded. And I will be honest with you, there was an explosion happening inside me. But I have learned, through years of managing Renata and years of watching what happens when you react instead of respond, that the moment you lose control is the moment the other person wins the story. So I nodded. I said, okay. I went to the bathroom and I closed the door and I sat on the edge of the tub and I let myself feel everything for exactly 5 minutes. And then I stood up, washed my face, and began making a list in my head. The first thing I did was call my sister. I told her everything, quietly, in the bathroom, with the fan running. She wanted to drive over immediately. I told her not to. I told her I needed her to meet me somewhere else later, and that in the meantime, I needed her to help me find a good family law attorney and, separately, to look up what constitutes criminal assault in our state. She went quiet for a second, and then she said, "You're already planning." And I said, "I've been planning since I saw the scissors." I came out of the bathroom. Daniel was still in the kitchen. I asked him, in a calm and ordinary voice, how his mother had gotten in. He said he had given her a key a few weeks ago because she might need to check on things. I asked him what things. He couldn't answer. I asked him if he had been in the house when she came in last night. He said no. He had been asleep. I asked him how he knew what time she came. He said she had texted him after. He had a text from his mother, sent at 2:17 in the morning, telling him what she had done. And he had gone back to sleep. I want you to sit with that. His mother texted him at 2 in the morning to tell him she had just cut off his wife's hair while she slept. And he went back to sleep and said nothing to me. He let me wake up and discover it myself. I asked him, still calm, if he thought what his mother had done was wrong. He said she was upset. I asked again. He said you shouldn't have been spending so much time with Marcus. And that was the last real conversation we had as a married couple, though he didn't know that yet. That afternoon, while Daniel was at work, I did several things in a very specific order. First, I went to the police station and I filed a report for criminal assault. The officer I spoke with took it seriously. Cutting someone's hair without consent is assault in most jurisdictions, and doing it while they sleep adds elements of breaking and entering and unlawful entry depending on circumstances. I gave them my photographs. I gave them the name of the scissors, brand, which I had looked up and confirmed did not match anything we owned. I told them about the 217 text, which I had photographed off Daniel's phone that morning while he was in the shower. He had left it on the counter. I had maybe 40 seconds. Second, I met with a family law attorney that same evening. My sister came with me. I laid out the facts, the photographs, the timeline, the key, the text message. The attorney's expression shifted about 30 seconds in and didn't shift back. She told me that Daniel's role, providing access, receiving confirmation, and taking no action to protect me or report the assault, made him potentially liable as an accessory. She told me that in divorce proceedings, this conduct would be highly relevant to questions of safety, asset division, and the general character of the marriage. She told me to begin documenting everything and to avoid any action that could be characterized as retaliation. I told her I had no interest in retaliation. I was interested in accuracy. She smiled at that. Third, I called my bank and moved my portion of our joint savings, exactly my documented contributions, not a penny more, into a personal account I opened that afternoon. I kept receipts of every transfer. I was not going to be caught unprepared. I went home that night and I behaved normally. This is the part people find hardest to believe when I tell this story. I watched television. I answered Daniel's questions about my day with short, truthful, boring answers. He seemed relieved by my calm. He thought I had processed it and settled down. He thought the lesson had worked, That is the only explanation I have for how completely he misread the situation. He thought his mother had broken something in me, and that the broken version of me would be easier to manage. He had no idea that I had spent the day building a case. Renata called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message, and I saved it immediately, in which she said, and I am quoting from memory as accurately as I can, "I hope you understand now that this family does not tolerate disrespect. What you were doing with that man at your office was shameful, and Daniel deserved better. I did what needed to be done. I hope we can move past this." She said she hoped we could move past this. After committing assault, after entering my home in the middle of the night, after standing over me with scissors, I saved that voicemail in 3 places. Over the next 10 days, I continued to behave normally. I was polite to Daniel. I did not mention the police report. I did not mention the attorney. I did not mention the voicemail. I let him believe that things were settling, that I was adjusting, that maybe Renata had been right and I just needed time to accept it. And while he believed that, the police were processing my report. My attorney was drafting documents, and I was quietly moving my most important personal belongings, documents, jewelry, things that were mine before the marriage, to my sister's apartment. On the 11th day, Renata was served with notice of the criminal assault charge. I was not there to see it, but my sister found out through a mutual contact and told me that Renata had called Daniel in hysterics, absolutely certain it was a mistake, absolutely certain I would never do such a thing. She had so thoroughly convinced herself that she was the victim in this story that the idea of legal consequences didn't even seem real to her. On the 12th day, Daniel was served with divorce papers at his office. My attorney had timed it deliberately. He called me 11 times between noon and 2 o'clock. I answered on the 12th call. He said, "You can't be serious." I said, "I have never been more serious about anything." He said his mother was facing criminal charges. I said, "Yes, I know." I filed them. He said I was destroying his family. I said, "Your mother destroyed my hair. You destroyed my marriage. I'm just filing paperwork." He tried over the following weeks to reframe everything. He told mutual friends I had overreacted. He told his family I had always had it out for Renata. He told anyone who would listen that the affair with Marcus had been real and that his mother had simply been trying to protect the family. Marcus, when he found out, because of course he found out, was furious on my behalf. He offered to provide a statement to my attorney confirming the nature of our relationship. His partner offered to corroborate. My attorney added both of them to the file. Renata ultimately accepted a plea arrangement that included a formal criminal record for assault, a restraining order keeping her a specific distance from me, and community service. She did not go to jail, and I want to be honest that part of me had hoped she would. But a criminal record is permanent. A restraining order is documented, and the plea meant she had to formally admit in a legal proceeding that she had entered my home and cut my hair without my consent. There was no version of events after that where she could claim she had done nothing wrong. Daniel, in the divorce proceedings, tried to argue that his involvement had been passive, that he hadn't known what his mother was planning, only that she was upset and wanted to talk to me. My attorney introduced the 217 text message, the one where Renata told him what she had done, and he went back to sleep. His attorney got very quiet after that. The divorce was finalized 7 months after that October morning. I received a fair settlement. I kept the things that were mine. I walked out of that courthouse with my sister beside me, and I stood in the parking lot in the autumn sunlight, and I thought about how much had changed since the last time I had stood somewhere feeling the wind on the back of my neck. My hair by then had been shaped into something intentional. A good stylist had cleaned up the damage and given me something I actually liked. It wasn't what I had grown for 3 years, but it was mine, and nobody had taken it from me. I thought about that a lot in the months after everything was settled. How Renata had thought she was taking something from me, my dignity, my composure, my sense of safety in my own home, and how what she had actually done was remove the last thing that was making me stay. I had spent 4 years managing her. 4 years swallowing my own reactions, smoothing things over, telling myself that Daniel was worth the difficulty of his mother. And in one night, she had made it impossible for me to keep lying to myself about what my life actually was. She thought the scissors were a punishment. They were a gift. Not one I would have asked for, and not one I would wish on anyone, but a gift nonetheless, the kind that forces clarity when you have been avoiding it for too long. I want to say something to anyone who is listening to this and recognizing something in it. Not the specific details, maybe, but the feeling. The feeling of being in a situation where the person who was supposed to protect you chose someone else. The feeling of standing in the rubble of something you built with your own hands and realizing that you have two choices: collapse into it or start deciding what comes next. You do not have to react immediately. You do not have to perform your pain for anyone. You are allowed to go quiet, make your list, and move with intention. Renata thought my silence meant I was broken. Daniel thought my calm meant I had accepted the lesson. They were both so certain they had won that they stopped watching. And that is exactly when I moved. I think about that October morning sometimes. The cold feeling on the back of my neck, the hair on the pillow, the scissors on the nightstand, and I think about how, in that moment, before I understood what had happened, I had a choice about who I was going to be on the other side of it. I chose carefully, and I have not regretted it for a single day since. If you are still here, still listening, thank you. This was not an easy story to tell, but it is mine, and I told it exactly the way it happened. Every photograph, every text message, every carefully saved voicemail, every quiet decision made while someone else thought I was losing. I was never losing. I was just waiting for the right moment to show my hand.